TDS has had a lot of balance changes over the years, and while most of the balance changes have been pretty good for the affected tower, at least recently, some of them were pretty bad and made you question who the fuck decided to go through with that change. And in this video, I want to talk about some of these balance changes and overall be confused as to who was cooking these balance changes. Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and sub, please. And I also have new things to promote, which probably sounds lovely. I finally launched channel memberships. You might have noticed the cool little join badge next to my name, and if you click that, for $3 Canadian a month, you can get the typical shout out at the end of videos, cool badges, custom emojis that will not be in the Discord server, by the way, and a couple more creative things like a custom Discord channel in my server. And in that channel, if you join it, I will post leaks of upcoming videos and animations in the works. Oh yeah, and if I need voice actors, I might ask you. There's no guarantee though. So if that interests you, go buy them if you want. You don't have to, it's completely up to you, but it will support me in a very consistent way, so I thank you heavily. Anyway, with that stuff out of the way, I hope you enjoy this video. First balance change I want to mention is the dreadful Toxic Gunner nerf on March 12th. And I'll give some backstory to Toxic Gunner before the nerf, and I'll do that for every other tower in this video. During the Frost Invasion, which was released on May 8th, 2021, the player base were given 2 new event towers to mess around with. Sledger, which was earned during the Frost Invasion event that was happening, and Toxic Gunner, which was earned from the Trick or Threat event, which was Halloween of 2020. Toxic Gunner was an insane support tower, able to slow down enemies by 50% with poison bullets, which also drained enemy HP over time. And while the poison damage was extremely lackluster, only doing literally 10 DPS, that wasn't the point of Toxic Gunner. He was one of the best slowdown towers along with Sledger at the time. Oh yeah, did I mention he had a bug which made him able to slow bosses? Yeah, the game was really hard when this existed, let me tell you. Anyway, Toxic Gunner unfortunately stopped being a good tower on March 12th, 2022 for absolutely no reason as well. It wasn't like this guy was easily accessible. The Halloween 2020 badge was one of the least earned badges in the entire game, making the tower strength justifiable. So tell me why this guy's slowdown gets nerfed to 10% max slowdown. If a zombie was moving at 2 studs per second, it would be slowed to 1.8. What was the point of this nerf? This nerf was really quickly changed, although not much better, 2 days later to 20% max slowdown, which means the zombie would be slowed to 1.6 studs per second. While Toxic Gunner was still technically usable with some slowdown capability and having lead detection and being relatively cheap, there were other towers like the already existing Sledger, the Electroshocker buff that would happen months later, and Warden also coming out months later. All of these having better stun capability and Warden having hidden and lead, basically one-upping Toxic Gunner in every way. Even if he got his prime 50% slowdown back, it still made you question, what was the point of Toxic Gunner now? Toxic Gunner would unfortunately stay like this for, not joking, November of 2023, a year and 8 months before something changed about him. This change would come into him being turned into more of a chip damage DPS tower, specializing in his poison damage rather than his slowdown, along with having the capability of reducing defense. Fun fact, apparently this reducing defense thing was coded into him when he came out, but was never implemented until this change. Why? He currently has the same stats from November of 2023 and is a pretty decent jack of some trades, having some slowdown, great poison damage, and defense dropping capabilities, along with decent cost and good range. But I think this still stands as one of the worst nerfs in the game's history. The next tower I want to cover is the attempted militant rework of 2021. I classify this as a rework because they overall changed the militant by giving him a reload mechanic and balancing him around that. Even before this, militant was a bit all over the place. His most notable state was him being the John Tower back in 2020 and worked the same, being an early to mid game tower, but had an overpowered ability that made him able to buff the damage of towers in its range by 30%. Then, during the overhaul update, he was slightly nerfed statistically and had his ability removed. Then, during Frost Invasion, this rework happened and he became complete garbage. At max, a militant shot 7 bullets a second and had a magazine of 30, meaning he would only shoot for 4.2 seconds before having to reload for 2.5. You see the problem here? He spends like half the time reloading compared to him shooting. And on top of this, you pay 7 grand for him to do 4 damage. That's how bad he was. I think the commando rework is a great reflection as to how you make reload towers work. High damage to make up for that reload time. And I still think militant having a reloading mechanic was really cool and made him actually kind of interesting. And if you're curious, yes, militant is actually useful now, having good range in DPS and flight detection. An honorable mention I want to give is literally every tower in the overhaul update. About 90% of the towers in that update were nerfed into the floor, with only a few exceptions, and those exceptions didn't even buff them by a lot. Although one of them I want to specifically highlight is the rocketeer tower. The infamous rocketeer tower once was an actual useful tower for Fallen, which became completely redundant in about 2 updates. The first nerf was in the overhaul. Just like everything else in that update, rocketeer was nerfed, but unlike other towers, this man was shown no mercy. He went from doing 120 damage before the overhaul update to doing 60 damage. Now, while this state of rocketeer was pretty dreadful, it wasn't the worst thing. You could still do 480 damage if 8 rocketeers were placed, although the next update just nerfed him even harder. Frost Invasion Rocketeer is where he reaches complete rock bottom. He went from doing 60 damage per shot to 40 damage per shot. What the fuck were you supposed to do with 40 damage? And to add insult to injury, you paid $12,000 for 40 fucking damage, and he didn't even have hidden detection. Why? Why? Another tower I want to briefly mention is Pyromancer. During Frost Invasion, somebody decided to make him speed up enemies? Why? Whose decision was that? A couple more honorable mentions I want to say that weren't too extensive, but were still pretty bad for the tower, I'd say. First one is the Pursuit in the Night 4 update of the Solar Eclipse event, where he got his missile damage nerfed from 30 to 5, making his total missile damage go from 150 to 30. And this never got fixed after the event. It took a fucking year for him to get the ship. The next one's Engineer. Engineer hasn't been victim to horrible nerfs, but one thing I can say for certain is they cannot decide what to do with this fucking tower. The current worst state of Engineer was her 3 Sentry state, which was March of 2023. Her combined DPS just wasn't good for the price tag of 4,500 gems. And the final one is the Commando. Doing research, I found that Commando was nerfed in the Mega update and not in the Overhaul update, which is what I thought, where he got his infamous shit stats of having 40 DPS for $22,000. The reason I say this is because Commando came out on August 9th, 2019, and the Mega update happened in October 13 of 2019, meaning this guy was good for 2 months before he became complete garbage. Ain't no fucking way, bro. Finally, the last tower I want to mention is the Golden Cowboy nerf in April of 2023. And prior to this, Cowboy and Golden Cowboy got reworked in the Wanted Dead update in September of 2022. That update changed Cowboy in a very positive way, making him do more DPS and a more consistent way of making cash, because prior to that, it was every 5 shots you would get a random number of money. This was also the period where Golden Cowboy had his most infamous upgrade, the level 2 upgrade, which gave him 5 damage and made him earn $65, which I still think should be the upgrade for level 2 today. But point being, he was fine. As a Golden Tower, which is another issue I might address, they're entitled to having overpowered stats, considering if you wanted, for example, Golden Cowboy, and you had none of the other skins, it is a 1 in 6 chance to get him from the crate, which cost 50,000 coins, or you waited in the shop for like years. April 7th, 2023 was Judgment Day for Golden Cowboy. To sum up his changelog, they essentially nerfed his damage, his cash, his range, upped his cost, and he now took 12 shots to get cash on level 4 and 5. The combinations of these nerfs actually made it, not joking, more useful to just use a normal Cowboy instead of Golden Cowboy. The one that cost 50,000 coins, by the way. It was more worth it to use the free version. Even now, I still think Golden Cowboy is a bit underwhelming. But, you know, at least he isn't the version I just talked about. those are just a couple of towers I wanted to talk about. You know, just take a trip down memory lane to remember that this game has the most interesting balanced decisions of any tower defense game, in my opinion. If you have some more terrible balancing choices that I didn't cover, feel free to comment them, and I'll heart them. Either way, I hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, buy memberships if you want, join Discord, like and sub, and have a good day.